Sure, MK Ultra ended in the 70s, but have you heard of its alleged continuation through Monarch Programming? Today, we're going to discuss concepts from the book The Illuminati Formula Used to Create an Undetectable Total Mind-Controlled Slave by Cisco Wheeler and Fritz Springmeier, and signs that you may be under mind control and not even realize it. So I want to remind you all before we get into it that this book came out in the 90s, and I am by no means insinuating that Monarch Programming was a real thing or is a real thing. However, when you look at trauma victims and their survivor stories, it's quite eerie how often it mirrors some of the programming tactics described in this book. So let's get into it. The first sign that you may have been under mind control is if your personality constantly shifts to fit those around you. This is something that the book talks about called identity fragmentation. In other words, splitting occurs at a very young age through birth trauma, and then they are programmed with new alters or alternate personalities to come out depending on who they are interacting with. The second sign that you may have been under mind control is constantly apologizing for other people, especially their bad behavior. This is also discussed in the book when it comes to how people who are under mind control are often controlled by handlers or their caretakers or some kind of authority figure. So if you're still apologizing for other people's bad behavior, you may have normalized bad behavior in childhood and are continuing to do it through adulthood. A third sign of alleged mind control is losing time or forgetting what you were just talking about. This can be a sign of dissociation or triggered amnesia. The book talks about how there are certain triggers that can put us back into hypnotic or dissociative states. So your body or your mind, again, may recognize these kind of triggers from childhood. But it doesn't automatically mean that you've been programmed as a monarch slave. It can also mean that you had traumatic things happen to you as a kid and your body couldn't store the long-term memory, so you end up having fragmented memories as an adult. The fourth sign that you may have been programmed is that you feel strange loyalty to people around you, even when they're not treating you right. This goes back to the idea of handlers in Monarch Programming, meaning you had some kind of authority figure guiding your narrative or telling you who you are rather than you getting to decide. Oftentimes, when we feel a strange loyalty to somebody who's treating us bad, again, we're used to these patterns in childhood, and unless we do something to stop the pattern in adulthood, we will continue to attract the same types of people we recognize from our youth. The fifth sign of alleged mind control is that you over-explain yourself. This goes along with identity fragmentation and suppressing the true self in childhood and programming. In other words, you weren't allowed to have your own identity. You were supposed to comply to the authority figures and who they wanted you to be. And again, if we don't do anything to disrupt these behaviors or recognize them in ourselves, we continue to act this way through adulthood and continue to explain away everybody's bad behavior or to over-explain ourselves and our motives, since we're already anticipating that somebody's going to criticize us for having a voice. The sixth sign of alleged mind control programming is that you're always feeling watched and monitored. We have in previous videos discussed that there are technologies like V2K and microwave and radio frequencies that can send out synthetic telepathy, but I have no evidence that this is actually being used, simply only that it exists. This is also something that a lot of survivors and targeted individuals talk about. So it depends. Are you going to discount all of their stories? Or are you open to the idea that there could be technology being used that is beyond our comprehension? A lot of trauma survivors also come from families where there's heavy religious programming. So it may be hard to break away when literally everything and everyone you know is operating on that program. Also, if you're a person that always feels like you're being watched or monitored, you may be remembering somebody else's plans for you that they had before you were even born, which is often mentioned in this book, especially in the part where they talk about personality tests on children at 18 months of age to determine whether that child will go to the entertainment industry, be funneled into military, or maybe work for some kind of intelligence agencies. Either way, they talk about these personality tests setting the stage for somebody's life path. The seventh sign that you may be under mind control is that you have a hard time making decisions for yourself. And this could be because throughout your whole life, you've always had somebody who acted as a handler, a guidance counselor, somebody grooming you, or somebody making the decisions for you. Because again, it goes along with what the book talks about, how we have predetermined paths set out for us if we were part of this kind of programming. So if we have alleged paths that we're supposed to go down, then we may have alleged handlers that are in our lives to encourage us to go down certain paths. Because like I said, they had a plan for you even before you were born. The eighth sign that you could be under some kind of mind control is that your body reacts before you do. In other words, you start to notice that your body will freeze up around certain people, especially if it mirrors behaviors of somebody from your past. Your body recognizes that someone is toxic long before your mind catches up, and your mind may even try to rationalize it and why that person is safe, even though your body knows that they are not. This is often why we end up in abusive relationships and stay in them for a long time, because we've learned to over-identify with our mind rather than listening to the cues from our body. The ninth sign that you may be under mind control is that you downplay your intuition. Oftentimes, people who are intuitive, neurodivergent, or psychic in some way feel like they've been targeted. And a lot of these Monarch Programming books talk about the targeting of individuals who had higher intuition or were from certain bloodlines, especially because when they put these children in certain dissociated states, they were able to communicate or embody spiritual entities. Again, this is all alleged, so take that with a grain of salt. But it's important that we start learning to trust our intuition and remember that if we feel like we've been targeted or under mind control, it was likely for a reason, which means your intuition is really powerful if somebody was trying to control it. And the 10th sign that you may have been under mind control is if you were in a gifted and talented program, you had family in intelligence or military, or came from a very religious upbringing. Again, these signs together do not automatically mean you've been under mind control. This is just something that is mentioned in the book. And I say gate kids because the book mentions that programming usually didn't work on people who had an IQ of 130 or lower. So they focus on kids with an IQ of 130 or higher. What's interesting about the connection with gate kids is that the criteria for deciding whether or not somebody was gifted was often that they were a creator rather than a copier. So this was somebody who started trends instead of act on them. So if you were a programmer, wouldn't you want to focus on those kids that had creative intuition and not just the kids that were following everybody else? This definitely gives you something to think about. So what do we do if we recognize any of these signs? First of all, I want to reassure you that just because you notice some of these behaviors doesn't mean that you're absolutely a mind-controlled slave or that anyone is targeting you. Like I said, a lot of the concepts discussed in this book seem to be in parallel with a lot of trauma survivors' stories today. But just because there's a correlation, it doesn't mean it was caused by it. So here are some things we can do if you notice any signs from this list. The first and most important thing is to start getting comfortable in your own energy field. I absolutely recommend meditation, and I recommend meditation without any sounds or frequencies so you can start getting used to what your own energy field feels like. Now, if you can't do it without a guided meditation or the gateway tapes, that is totally fine too. Start where you are. I just recommend raw dog meditation because it helps you get used to your own energy field. And if you can meditate without sounds or frequency, you're going to be a very powerful person who can be very in touch with your intuition if you train yourself to do this, because most people are not comfortable sitting alone with themselves. The next thing that you can do is work with a trusted therapist, coach, mentor, or some kind of 12-step program where other people have experienced the same things as you. A lot of trauma survivors end up in 12-step programs for addiction, and recovery can be extremely beneficial and helpful to those who have suffered from some kind of trauma. I myself was in a 12-step recovery program, not related to any kind of Monarch programming that I know of, but I do have questions after reading that book. 12-step meetings are a great way to overcome our addictions and meet people who have also experienced what we're going through. And it's a great environment to share about our experiences without feeling embarrassment, because oftentimes we'll find that a lot of people in those recovery groups have had a lot of the same experiences that we have, and there can be so much healing in community. If 12-step meetings aren't your thing, you can also try journaling. And if you need any free tools, I have a free fear inventory and 21-day habits tracker in the link of my description. Something else that really helped me overcome trauma and mind control is learning about my personal astrology blueprint and my personal human design blueprint, because it reminded me that I am a unique individual and I came here with a unique purpose for life. Some people might argue that that's no different than some programmer telling me what path I could be on, but I found astrology to be a very helpful tool in reframing my life path in a positive way. There's negative and positive polarities in astrology, and astrology can also give us timelines for why we're experiencing certain themes when we experience them. It can also leave you feeling more empowered, knowing that we may have made some of these choices on a soul level before we came into this lifetime. For example, deciding to work on certain themes like power struggles, our relationship with authority, like developing our intuition, or leading and guiding other people in some way. And if you feel in your heart that you're meant to be a healer, remember that oftentimes people aren't good teachers unless they've been through something themselves. So if you have been through trauma and you feel guided to help other people, the best thing you can do is heal yourself and then share the methods that you use to heal yourself with the other people who need it. This can also help us find purpose in life. And I know for me personally that it's really helped me reframe some of the experiences that I've been through, knowing that my experiences weren't in vain and that by overcoming them, one day I can help another person. If you're interested in working with me one-on-one, I have links in my description for all of my videos. I also have a community over here on my YouTube page, so feel free to use that to connect with other people who have been through the same things. And like I said, take everything about Monarch Programming with a grain of salt. After all, Fritz Springmeier, the man who co-wrote the book, was arrested for armed robbery a few years after writing it. Was he set up, or was he not the greatest guy? I'll let you sit with that one and decide what you think about it. But thanks for watching this video. Let me know if you have any other ideas for topics on this subject, and I will see you guys in the next one.